and welcome to another edition of the Pedalshift Project. The Pedalshift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments around the bike touring lifestyle, from tips and tricks to ideas on how to tour more. Let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are available at pedalshift.net/075. You can email me at the show, pedalshift@pedalshift.net. And you can check the show out also on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. I don't know about the rest of you, but spring has sprung in DC, which is kind of nice. I mean, we had sort of that spring-like weather in February, but it's really nice right now. We've had our annual cherry blossoms. We've had all that. It's time to really start thinking bike touring here, at least in DC, hopefully for you as well. I've got a ton of good stuff for you on this episode, so let's just get cracking. First up on the show is the Journal. The Journal, of course, is when we talk about bike tours, yours and mine. I've got, well, let's start off with the good news first. That is the upcoming See Ya Endo tour that I'm doing with Belle Starr the Pug this coming weekend as I record. I'm really looking forward to this. I've been looking forward to this all winter long. I did a couple of shakedown rides, as if you're been with the show for a little bit, at least starting last fall with her. I'm not going to do every single bike tour with her from now on, but I'm excited to at least have that as an option. So this is going to be the first multi-day one with her. So I'm going to give you a bit of a preview here of what it's all going to look like. And, here we go. Friday, as I record this, I'm going to be biking out to Union Station, which is the train station here in Washington, D.C., and the weather is not looking real favorable for day one. The good news is that most of that is actually going to be on a train and very little of it is going to be on the bike. So what I'm going to be planning on doing is wrapping myself up in my rain gear, and I've got a setup for Belle in her front carrier with a rain cover that actually snaps over the whole sort of mechanism. I think it's going to work out really well. It's using an old backpack rain cover. You know, those kinds they're like glorified shower caps. Does anybody use shower caps for their intended purpose anymore? Someone must. They make them. Anyways, this is a glorified shower cap that goes over everything, which should keep her nice and dry. Not going to be a very long ride in any real heavy rain, but it will be from where I am in DuPont Circle to Union Station. It's like maybe 20, 30 minutes at most. I'll take it easy. I'll be fully loaded, of course. By the time I get to Union Station, I want to get there, say an hour or so ahead of time, or at least maybe we'll call it a half hour. I'll probably leave an hour in advance just to make sure I've got plenty of time. Normally with trains, I don't stress too much about getting there early or, having any kind of real prep. I make the exception when it comes to bicycle tours. And I think I'm going to be making another exception upon an exception with a bicycle tour with a dog. Just, there's always extra stuff. I guess if you've got kids, you probably have the same issue whenever you're traveling with them. You always got to make sure that they're happy and protected and safe. And I'm going to have the same thing with Belle. The added issue is, of course, I'm responsible for loading the bike onto the train. The folks who work the train, are they still conductors? I'll call them conductors. And if it's not right, someone please tell me. Those folks are not allowed to actually affix the bike into the bike racks in the baggage car. So, I'm going to be thinking about, okay, Belle's in her bag and I'm going to have to hang this bike up, and everyone's always in a rush with the trains. When you've got the bike, everyone's in a rush. They want you to hook it up as quickly as you can and get to your seat so they can leave on time. And then when you're at one of these little stations, when they want to stop for like a minute at most, you're under the gun to get your bike off of a train, in a hurry. So, when it comes to prep time, if I'm not carrying a bike or a dog for a train, I'll roll right up at the last second. With them both, I'll make sure I get there with plenty of time, and I'm up at the head of the line, and I've got plenty of time to handle all of this. Like I said, it's going to be raining, so obviously on the train, that's not that big of a deal. But when I get to Cumberland, which is, let's see, I think it's about a 3-hour ride, give or take. Getting off the train, I've got to leave the place where I'm at. I'll have Belle with me. Walk outside of the train, walk down or up, depending on the direction, to the baggage car. And then, it's like stopwatch time, okay, quick, get your bike, get your bag, get off. We got to keep going to Pittsburgh. And, so that's going to be a bit of a rush, but I think I should be all right and in a pretty good place, to get all of that handled. Originally I was planning on just camping out on the trail, which starts literally steps away from where the train drops you off at the Cumberland rail station. I think because it's likely going to be raining all day Friday and all night Friday and into a little bit of Saturday morning, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that YMCA campsite. Not because I want to spend $12 or I want the showers or anything like that. I probably won't need any of those things. But what they do have that the trail doesn't have is a covered area. And the last time I was out there, it might have been the last time, I actually set up the tent underneath the covered area to avoid getting wet. And it's not that the tent can't do it or the tent can't handle it. It's just that, as many of you know from a camping perspective, if you've got an option to sleep dry or to make it so that your gear has minimal exposure to wet, you take it every time. That's basically what I'm going to be doing. So if the weather forecast holds, I think that's what's going to be happening. And basically the next morning it's wake up after kind of a chilly night. I think it's going to be chilly every night, maybe even in the upper 30s, but totally manageable. And then basically going down the trail for the next 184.5 miles until I hit Washington, which shall be glorious. It's always nice to get the first one out of the way in the season. I'm probably not going to do a tour journal for this one. So for those of you who have been signed up for the newsletter and are looking forward to that, I think I'm going to do a pass on this one only because I've done it before for this trail. And I'm mindful of the fact that I talk about the C&O pretty much incessantly, and it's probably for the best for me not to continue to keep doing the live stuff. What I am going to do, I promise to do, is I'm going to record things while on the trail, if not the whole ride, parts of it, fun stuff, and I'll share it on a future episode of the Pedalshift Project. If not the next episode, then the one after that. I've just got a bunch of cool things coming up, so I won't commit to it being part of episode 76, maybe 77. We'll see how that all goes. I'm also, as a part of this ride, going to be doing more of a write-up for the new editions of the Pedalshift Guide to Bicycling the C&O. Of course, that's an online resource for you all. That's at pedalshift.net/C&O or Cando. And it's starting to take a little bit of shape. By the end of last season, if you were going there at all, I had gotten all of the videos, or at least some of the videos up, and now I've got all of the videos up there, and the resource on the website is starting to really take hold. What I'm trying to do is not to replace the existing resources out there. There's some really good ones, but I've noticed that the one that I rely on has not been updated. Oh boy, it may be going on 10 years. Not that there's a lot to really add to it, but I wanted to add some new things. I wanted to add some things that maybe weren't thought about back then. Things like, what are cell phone signals like? What does it look like? Now that we've got YouTube as a better resource, I now have visuals of all of the campsites. So you can take a look before you go and maybe choose which ones look best to you based on your ride. Those are the types of things that I'm kind of throwing out there. So you can check that all out on the website. I'm also adding, as of, a few days ago, I've uploaded a few of the things that I've written. I want to make sure that they don't make me look like a complete malcontent. For each 10-mile section of the trail. So I've got about 18 different sections, 18, maybe 19, that break down the trail into 10-mile segments that take, roughly about an hour or so to ride. Some of you may ride it faster, some of you not, but that way you can kind of get a flavor of what the next hour is going to be, or how the 5 hours in your day of riding is going to look like, or what you may want to take a break for off of the trail, things like that. So that's all going to be over on the website as well. So I've got the DC end. I've been working on writing from the DC end, but I think because I'm going to be starting in Cumberland, I'll be able to do some of the writing for the Cumberland end as well. So hopefully by the time the real touring season, and I mark that by when the Park Service puts the handles on the water pumps, which I think is usually middle of April or so, I hope to have most of that all done. So, C&O this weekend with Belle Starr. We'll definitely be talking about it more on the Pedalshift Project in future episodes. But take a look on social media. I'll probably get some stuff up on Instagram and Twitter and possibly Facebook as well through the weekend. You can see images of all of it going on. Should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it. Next up in the journal, Pacific Coast Route 2017. Oh boy. If the last portion of the journal was all about joy and anticipation, this is more, oh geez Louise, for lack of a better way of putting it. So for those of you who have been paying any attention, or those of you who are in California, you had a wet winter, and I think I'm sort of doing that as an understatement. The fire hose of rain that hit California was incredibly great for ending the drought just perplexed the state and the region for so long. My 2014 ride and my 2015 rides in California were all really impacted by the drought. It's nice to know that all of the reservoirs are full to the brim and that things are going to be at least a little better on that front. The problem: there were massive mudslides in the Big Sur area. Some of you may have heard about this. I think I may have even talked about this on the show. I love how I have no independent recollection of anything I talk about on this show, so hopefully all of you remember. If only someone would record these things, that would help me, right? So the Big Sur Bridge, one of the Big Sur bridges, most notably, I'll be reading in a second, near Big Sur, the Pfeiffer Canyon Bridge, is out. It's toast. If you've seen some pictures of it from the local media, it is not safe. It is not safe for travel, for motorized vehicles certainly, and I would posit also for bikes and for pedestrians and wildlife and anything at this point. They are screwed up and structurally unstable. So as a result, they've closed it, and that is the only way to get through Big Sur on Highway 1 there, the California, famous California Route 1. So I'm going to read to you what Adventure Cycling Association says as of February 2017. Travel advisory and detour. There are, quote, multiple closures on State Route 1 due to mudslides and the failure of the Pfeiffer Canyon Bridge just north of Big Sur and south to Ragged Point. It is unknown when that bridge will be replaced. Due to a lack of nearby roads, understatement, an extensive detour is required. The Salinas Valley Detour is 147.9 miles and can be found at this Ride with GPS link in the show notes. I'll have all of these links, by the way, in the show notes at pedalshift.net/075. It is about 30 miles longer than the Pacific Coast route. It begins on map 46 in Marina. Map 46 is a reference to their map numbers, and ends south of Cambria. Services are limited for the 60 miles between King City and Paso Robles. Note that the roads around Lake Nacimiento, apologies, California, I cannot name many of your landmarks because I am incapable, apparently. The roads around the lake can carry heavy traffic, including pickup trucks pulling boat trailers. Also, because the detour travels inland, the weather will be significantly different than that on the coast. It will typically be drier and up to 20 degrees hotter. I would say hotter than that, certainly in the summer. To follow the status of the State Route 1 closure, they recommend you follow the Caltrans current highway conditions, link in the show notes. More information also at the Big Sur blog, and that's at thebigsurblog.com. Also with our Facebook page and a forum discussion on adventurecycling.org. I've got links to all of those in the show notes. All right. What does this mean? If you were thinking of doing the whole route, the whole Pacific Coast route, you're kind of hosed. And I take no pleasure in saying that. There is no way to do the Pacific Coast route as the ACA has it properly this year. It doesn't look like there's going to be any chance that this bridge is going to be fixed. It doesn't look like there's any chance that there's going to be alternatives that will take you through Big Sur in one shot, unless you do some things that we're going to talk about in a couple minutes here. Everything I've heard, and of course, Adventure Cycling Association wouldn't be saying, what do they call it? It is unknown when the bridge will be replaced. It's not happening anytime soon. There's been some open speculation and question as to whether or not they would potentially allow light traffic like pedestrians or bikes on these bridges, but I haven't seen nothing to suggest that that's going to be the case. I don't know what the blockade is like, so for those of you who would risk it and try to go through it, I don't even know if that would be possible. My best guess is that it's probably quite blocked off, and if you're riding at all loaded, there's just probably no way that you'd be able to access going around those bridges. So that's where we're at for that. It's just, you're not going to be able to go on Highway 1, that route, the way it is probably this year. That inland route, I mean, straight up looks like crap. I mean, sorry, it just does. In addition to it being longer and inland, which kind of, that part of the state, it's flat out uncomfortable when you get used to being on the coast and then pushing back inland. I mean, some people are better at temperature regulation than I am, but I got quite used to it being a high of about 55 or 60 and then lows in the low 50s, to be spiking up into the 90s and having a lot of, rugged roads and ones that frankly aren't really well designed for bicycling in mind as well. Just a lot of traffic, as the ACA noted here. A lot of heavy trailers, a lot of folks that aren't used to probably driving around bicycles. I just think that does not look like a good route. If someone ends up doing it and wants to let us know about it, give a thumbs up or thumbs down, please feel free. If I'm being a bit of a baby here, I would love to be proven otherwise. So, definitely shoot an email over pedalshift@pedalshift.net if you've ever ridden that, detour at all. I'm going to say it looks like crap. So what's this mean? I'm curious, just as a matter of course, what this is going to do to bike touring numbers on the coast this year. Will this impact people from making the choice to do the Pacific Coast at all, especially if you're planning on doing a through ride? Are there going to be more rides between, say, Canada and San Francisco? That could be the case. Are we going to see fewer rides south of Big Sur? Or are people going to figure out a way to circumvent all this? I'm openly curious about that. I was really thinking of doing the Pacific Coast again. I know. I always do these same rides, but I just like these rides. But now, of course, I can't do the ride that I did last spring on the Brompton. So, it's making me have to rethink what my options are. So, what are my recommendations? If you're planning on doing the whole Pacific Coast tour this year, don't despair. I mean, I'm hoping to go back and doing some portion of the coast. I may not be able to do Big Sur, but that isn't the only thing on the coast. It was the central piece of my tour last year. It was amazing. It's very cool. It's worth seeing. The bridge is going to come back. So should you. Make sure that happens. Don't make this feel like this is your one and only chance to see the area by bicycle. The bridge will return. So will you. So let me just start off by saying that. If you were thinking of doing part of the coast and part of the area included the Big Sur ride, say you were thinking of doing San Francisco to LA, which is a really typical ride, let me recommend doing Vancouver or Victoria to San Francisco. It is a gorgeous ride. It is fantastic. Yes, you're not getting Big Sur, but it is a really, really amazing ride. And in particular, the portion between, the northern Oregon coast, say Astoria all the way down to San Francisco is a ride that I can never say no to and probably won't, may do it again this year. Who knows? That is a real jewel. So consider doing that in replacement or doing that plus something else if you've got time, if this is a timing issue for you as well. A full coast ride may still be possible with a fast forward. And of course, we're coming right off of last episode where I talked about fast forwards. I did a little bit of research on this. So let me throw a few ideas out at you right now. I have not fully baked these ideas, but there's a couple. The one that seems to be the most possible, although I haven't done any hypotheticals beyond just sort of what I think could be true, is getting a one-way car rental and picking it up in Monterey and going somewhere south of Big Sur. And that might be like San Luis Obispo or something like that. And granted, you're going to be having to take inland roads when you do this driving. It sucks that you're going to have to drive it as opposed to riding it like you'd intended. You're going to miss Big Sur, or actually you could even drive to Big Sur, see it, and then drive and turn around and come back because, that's certainly a possibility. But you're going to have to use inland roads for all of this, and that's probably going to mean the 101. And it's going to take some time and it's going to be part of the deal. And it's a one-way car rental and there's going to be expense. All of these types of things are a pain. But if you're thinking of the simplest way, the most direct line way to do this, you can totally do this. And if you even wanted to do it where you were maximizing the entire coast, you could ride your bike all the way to the closure at Big Sur, turn around, go back to Monterey. That would be possible. And then you can rent the car, go back to as far north as you can before the closure by driving south. Of course, I know this is confusing. I wish I had a map here. San Luis Obispo, say, and drop off the car there, bike northbound to Big Sur, touch the edge of the bridge, turn around and come back and continue your ride. I mean, that is totally possible. That's going to take extra days. It's going to be going, northbound on the coast, which is generally not the direction a lot of people do, but many do. So consider it. That might be one way that you can do it. I looked at some other options. Amtrak is not super helpful here unless you bail on a lot of the rides south of San Francisco. You can take a look at the schedules and see what's going on, but you would essentially have to go well to the south. You could do the same thing where you turn around and kind of touch the bridge and all that other kind of stuff, but that's going to add days to your trip. May not appeal to you. A lot of people like just this linear southbound route. That all makes sense to me, but just throwing this out there. I did look into the tried and true transit options, and the Monterey Salinas Transit does have a route that goes to Big Sur, which I actually didn't know, and I think it's actually kind of a great idea for a fast forward for folks. You could take a bus from Monterey all the way to Big Sur, and that's line 22. But I'm pretty sure that line isn't going to go all the way up there. For purposes of this, I don't know how far the line's going to go up with that bridge closer. I just couldn't tell exactly where it was, but it would be interesting that you could use that maybe as your return trip. If you're going to do the touch the bridge kind of idea, that might be something to consider, but check that out. That's line 22 on the Monterey Salinas Transit, line. Now, south of there, I don't know what's going on. And my guess is that there isn't really any transit opportunities there, but take a look at that. That might be helpful for you. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some enterprising types that do shuttles for hire, but I haven't heard anything. If anybody out there, especially if you're living in the region, I got a bunch of listeners out in that area, shoot me an email or put a link in the show notes or drop a comment in the show notes. If there's anything that you're hearing out there, or if there's pre-existing shuttles that exist, because I think that might be something that a lot of folks can take advantage of. So bottom line, this sucks. There's ways to continue on. As I've said, they're far from ideal. Vancouver, or as I've done it, Victoria to San Francisco is really, really awesome. So if you're kind of in that bummed out despair moment as you're listening to this, maybe you're only hearing about this for the first time and you were planning on a spring or a summer ride, don't let this stop you. Work around it. Do what you need to do. There's tons of different ways. This is a ride that you want to do what you have to do to make it happen, not to abandon based on one bridge being out. If you're a completist, I get it. I understand. I'm sort of like that myself, but I would say let that go as much as you can. This ride is worth doing in segments over a few years if you need to do it. If you were planning on doing a segment that included this, just shift where you're at if you can do that, because there are other segments that are totally worth doing. So that's it on the Pacific Coast ride in 2017. Next up on the show, we have a Super Connections section. This is when we talk about all the folks that I ever come in contact with regarding the show. First up is friend of the show, Pedalshift Society member Ethan Georgie, and he has another way of taking a look at fast forwards. We've been talking about it all last episode, talked about it a little bit today on this episode. Here's what Ethan has to say. I quote, "I was biking the C&O. The plan was that on Tuesday I'd pedal 40 miles to just outside Cumberland, camp, pedal the last 20 miles in the morning, hopefully find breakfast, meet the shuttle back to DC. Tuesday morning, the weather said it would be raining by noon and not stop until Wednesday morning. I started riding and considered my options. I had a plan. I wanted to stick to the plan. But sticking to the plan meant pitching my tent in the rain, spending the afternoon and evening stuck in my tent, trying to sleep with all my clothes damp, breaking camp with everything wet, and then riding through 20 miles of mud. Or I could gung-ho the whole thing and spend the night in a hotel. I decided I did not need to suffer and fast-forwarded to Cumberland. I hosed off my bike, which was covered in mud. I got a hotel room. I think I know which hotel you were staying at, by the way. A hot shower and a victory dinner. And I think I know where you may have had dinner, Krabby Pig, I'm hoping. Fit for any hero. And Wednesday morning, I didn't need to rush to catch my ride home. Hashtag not cheating. Totally agree. I've always been talking about fast forwards as being things that you would do off of the bike, but I think that you just gave a great example of a fast forward that you did on the bike by just gutting it out and pounding out some more miles and getting a better experience that way. So that's an awesome way of looking at fast forwards from a different perspective. And I don't even think you needed to throw that hashtag not cheating down. I think that was absolutely 100% okay. You did more miles on the bike. So there's no cheating whatsoever with that. Hotel rooms are definitely part of the plan for anyone, even if it wasn't part of your original plan. So Ethan, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Do you have examples of fast forwards that I hadn't thought about? I think there are others out there. I'm not even sure if I mentioned the one-way car rental idea in the last episode, but if I did, then here it is again. So lots of different options out there. It's hashtag not cheating, though. Next up in connections, I wanted to talk about a few in-person, like IRL, man, in real life, that I had with some touring folks out there. And the first one was, let's see, it would have been last week, middle of last week as I record this. I went to a Washington area Bicycling Association, or WABA, event featuring women who cross the country by bike. It was a great event. And the unfortunate thing was the audio situation there would have made it too cruddy to share. So I actually didn't even bother recording this. This was one of the things I was hoping that I could pull off. When all was said and done, it wouldn't have made for very compelling podcasts, not because the content wasn't great, but because just how it played out. There was a lot of visual stuff, and the room just wasn't good for it all. So I'm going to sort of recount what was going on there. It was a great reminder, first and foremost, that touring, that one prefers for oneself is not the be all and end all. I mean, I think that I've established on this show over 75 episodes that I'm much more of kind of a loaded panniers kind of guy. I'm much more a trail kind of guy than a road guy, but I can do both. But I haven't done any real bike packing to speak of, which is something I intend to remedy and to intend to talk about on the show. So for those of you who are more into bike packing, trust me, I'm going to get more hopefully later on this summer on that. The thing that I noticed here for this event was all of the women who took part in the different types of tours that they described all did it differently. And the most interesting thing was that none of these three different types of tours that were talked about, none of them camped, not once, which I thought was really interesting because I put so much emphasis on it. And I want to make sure that everybody understands that's listening to the show is you don't have to camp. You really don't. I really like it. It's one of the things that draws me to bicycle touring, but it's not the be all and end all. And even, as Ethan talked about, hashtag not cheating, being in a hotel, because there's lots of people who do hotel the whole time, 100%. So, let me talk about some of these great tours. One of the folks here, or one of the group here, there were multiple people, multiple women here. It was a trio. They called themselves DC3 or the DC3. It was Leslie Jones, Liz Sherwood, and Kelly Westenhoff. They were all part of a supported tour that stayed in churches and schools, and every 5 days or so, they actually participated during a rest day, some rest day, building homes, and it was with a faith-based group that's sort of like Habitat for Humanity, or at least it sounded like it was maybe even associated with them a little bit. So that was a really cool way to mix a charitable endeavor with what you're doing, more than just sort of, hey, write a check or give a donation to this organization, which is done a lot and is really awesome. We know the MS Riders and all those other folks out there are all raising money for causes. This was actually physically getting in and hammering nails and building houses, which I just thought was really cool. So that was a DC3. That was Leslie, Liz, and Kelly. They were very awesome. And also they, like I said, they didn't camp. They stayed in churches and in schools, and it was set up by this organization. So that was that. Linnea Salvo. She was really amazing. She is the current world record holder as the oldest woman to cross the U.S. by bike. And she was, I believe, in her 70s, but you wouldn't know by seeing her. She was very, 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 very young at heart by a lot, and looked like she could kick the crap out of me in endurance and or sprints. She had SAG support the whole way. And I got the impression that she was not doing any camping as well. Very, very meticulously and well organized, as she had to be, because the Guinness folks are very, very meticulous about proving an actual trip. She did the Ride Across America, the Ram Ride route, and it sounded like that was a really cool ride. And she had some good images of all of that she shared as well. And that was Linnea. Let's see. And last but not least, Marie Morris. She and her husband did a cross-country route. I believe that was the Trans Am, or a modified version of it, because she had 3 rules for her tour that she cleared and set forth with her husband before she agreed to go on this ride. And that was, number 1, no camping. Number 2, rest days allowed. And number 3, no camping. So as you could tell, she was not into camping. We call this credit card touring, a little bit, although they were pretty loaded. They did panniers and everything like that, but they were going hotel to hotel. all across the country, and spent some time in some larger cities as a result, and modified the Trans Am tour. I think they ended up in Chicago for a little bit, and Minnesota for a little bit as well. But it looked like a really great tour. And my takeaway from all of this was, this was really inspiring, because I liked hearing how people were doing tours differently than how I do it, or how maybe you do it, and just proving yet again, you got to ride your ride, and you've got to do it the way that you want to do it. And it was really interesting seeing this really packed room, and it was packed. This was at Bicycle Space, which is my local bike shop of choice here in the DC area. And, I was expecting, we'll get a handful of people for this. There was more than a handful. They had to keep pulling out chairs for it. So to see a large group that was predominantly women coming to this because they were intrigued and wanted to learn more about bicycle touring, that really made my night. And it was really fun and interesting and really very cool. So I wanted to give props to Washington Area Bicycling Association. I am a proud supporter of it, and this was a great event. So glad I could share that with you, even if I couldn't do it by audio, but it was all good. And I hope to hear more of events like this in the DC area and elsewhere. If you hear of an event like this and have a way to be able to share that, definitely shoot an email to me so I can share that with the rest of the folks listening on the Pedalshift Project. Last but not least, in connections, I had a beer. In Portland. I had a beer in Portland at the corner of Southeast Division and 12th. So many of you know what that means, that I was at the Beer Mongers at Southeast Division and 12th, and lo and behold, who knew? Actually, we planned this. Had a great evening on Sunday, this couple of days ago, as I record this, while I was in town for my cousin's bachelor party. This was sort of the denouement of my weekend, which was great. And met up with Brock and Aaron from the Sprocket, and Guthrie Straw, who you met from episode 71. Brock and Aaron, of course, have been on this show a few times, and I've been on their show, and many of you listen to both, and thank you for that. And Aaron Green, who I heard of course, but hadn't had an opportunity to meet before, and I was glad I did. He's the author of a book called We Were Like Sons, which is a bike touring memoir. I just ordered it, and I look forward to reading it, because he was a very cool guy. And, we just talked a little bike touring, talked a little bit of this and that. It was all really good, and it was a lot of fun. And of course, the locale was a lot of fun. It's always nice to be at the corner of Southeast Division and 12th. I enjoyed going there. It was really cool. And, we are going to be doing a crossover with the Sprocket podcast. Probably somewhere around the end of April. I will be in town again, not for my cousin's bachelor party, but for his actual wedding. We'll be back in the land of sunshine and bunnies. That will give me an opportunity to sit down in the Airstream trailer with the guys, and we will do one or more shows, and hopefully have some fun while we're at it. So that will be a lot of fun. Talk about bike touring and more. I think we might even throw in a little music. I think there was a bit of interest in rehashing the music episode, which was, I think, still recording. I think it's on hour 893, so we might be doing a part 2. And as always, we like to close out the show with a big thank you to all of the supporters of the show. If you like what you hear and want to hear more of it, you can help keep the show listener supported while expanding the offerings. We're talking $5, $2, $1 a month. Helps with the cost of hosting the podcast and the website. You can do it for a bit, cancel anytime, or you can do one-shot support. Got all of that. Pedalshift.net/society. On to the society. Ethan Georgie, Kimberly Wilson, Caleb Jenkinson, Cameron Lane, Andrew McGregor, Michael Hart, Josiah Matthews, Keith Nagel, Brock Dittis, Thomas Skadow, Michael Risica, Seth Krieger, Marco Loeb, Terrence Manson, Noah Schroer, Harry Telgadas, John Sikorsky, Richard Killian, Chris Barron, Scott Taylor, Brian Wren, Mark Van Ram, Brad Hipwell, Paul Mulvey, Stuart Buchan, Todd Stutz, Mr. T, Roxana Arning, and new for this episode, Nathan Poulsen, and all anonymous and past contributors for making this show happen. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedalshift at pedalshift.net. Lots of great content. You can hear the Pedalshift Project through iTunes or your favorite podcast aggregator. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his debut album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Habitat, wherever cool music is available.